back to Mennonite Heritage Village at home. So glad you could join us. We have a wonderful show lined up for you. Evelyn Friesen is going to be doing the immigration station here in our gallery. It's something that is often done when tours come through, and so if you were to book a tour, you'd be able to experience this presentation as well. But seeing as most of us are at home, and we're not doing big group tours, this is the next best thing. David Graham is going to be here singing the song "What a Wonderful World." Haley and I have a conversation about mental health and museums and how they connect together, as well as Andrea is going to be sharing a foundational story to us as Anabaptists, and the story of Dirk Willems and its connection to us here at the Mennonite Heritage Village with our garden, Peace Garden. So looking forward to that. But before we get going, I have another one of my Grandpa George moments, and so here's a little riddle that you can figure out. The English language is often so confusing. You can use is and are in so many ways. So which would you say is correct? 5 and 7 is 11, or 5 and 7 are 11? Well, while you think about that, please join us as we hear from and look at the presentation by Evelyn Friesen. Enjoy.
You're finding me this morning in the huge permanent exhibit gallery in the village center at Mennonite Heritage Village. Were we outdoors, walking down the village street would give you a sense of a way of life in a traditional Mennonite village during the late 1800s, like they had in Russia, like we have at the museum here. However, presently the village, of course, is closed for the winter. In the meantime, students do, and adults as well, sign up for the popular indoor winter program at this time of year. Unfortunately, the present-day COVID health protocols are really restricting us for this time being now. So then, today, I've gathered you around this great big wooden, handcrafted chest. It's called a chest in English. I am often stationed at this spot. It's referred to as the immigration station. It's a great place to explain, in a very small way, the story of a people called Mennonites, and more specifically, of their immigration to Canada. Before we explore the chest and to see what it might hold, let me take you back in time for a bit. Back to southern Russia during the mid-1800s. For 100 years and more, the Mennonites had enjoyed their freedoms in an almost self-governing, quaint little villages and businesses. That is, before news of an impending government-imposed Russification program was about to happen. Needless to say, the Mennonites became somewhat worried and very alarmed. Now then, let's remember that in Canada, Manitoba had just become a province of Canada in 1870. And shortly thereafter, even though the Métis and the French were already occupying lots along the rivers in Manitoba, William Hespeler was sent to Russia to look for settlers to inhabit this new area, this new Manitoba. Meanwhile, the Mennonites in Russia had also heard of this appeal. Being troubled by the news of this Russification program, they had felt very threatened by a steady erosion of their promised freedoms and liberties. There had been talk of leaving their farms and their villages and emigrating to this faraway country where they were told they would once again be able to worship as they pleased. They would be free to use the German language without interruption, to teach their children in their own private schools, where they would be exempt from joining military service. And they were told that Manitoba would provide them with land where they could live side by side and enjoy their liberties. I wonder if we can imagine the hardship, the choosing, the deciding. While not really knowing what lay ahead for them, should they choose to leave their properties, to embark on this unimaginable journey, including a 6-week ocean voyage? Should they consider that they might never be back to see family and friends, which they would likely leave behind? We read in countless diaries of their painstaking move and heart-rending stories of their goodbyes. One such entry reads, "I walked out of my beautiful garden and closed the gate. Looking back once more, I said to myself, I will never enjoy your fruit again." And my eyes filled with tears. Going on, he writes, "Farewells were taken of all who had gathered on our yard. These farewells were accompanied by many, many tears." And while they were aboard ship, another diary tells of an officer telling the passengers that they were going to an absolute wilderness. But they came. Between 1873 and 1880, near 7,000 Mennonites emigrated from Russia and came to Canada. In August of 1874, some 3,000 Mennonites left Liverpool, England, to sail the seas towards a new land. Many of them carried with them a wicker basket filled with reishi. There are toasted buns and toasted bread, good for the tummy when the waters should become rough on their 6-week ocean voyage, and they did. They crossed the seas, they sailed down the St. Lawrence River, they crossed the Great Lakes to Duluth, they took a train ride to the Red River in Minnesota, then boarded a steamboat at Moorhead, which finally took them to the junction of the Red and Assiniboine Rivers in Winnipeg, a place we call the Forks now. At Fort Garry, they bought a few food supplies, sugar probably and flour, a few tools that they thought they might need, and then they sailed back down to where the Red River meets the Rat River. Here, with the help of Métis settlers, whom they had hired, they loaded their chests and supplies onto Red River ox carts and headed for the immigration sheds, which the Canadian government had erected for them. It was a place to stay while they scouted out the surrounding area for high ground to build their villages. Many of the immigrants came to Canada with very few belongings. For some, the chist held all of their worldly goods when they arrived. This chist on display here holds some of the items that Mennonites would have brought with them from Russia. And I'm going to open the chest to show you just a few of these items. This is heavy and squeaky. Okay, let me pull out a couple of things here. Bergstrump. They well knew the climate in Manitoba was similar to theirs in Russia, with very cold winters. These are felt liners that get slipped into leather boots or rubbers to keep the feet and the legs warm. Clothes items. This is a shawl that has come from Russia. It's a woolen one. It's already plenty torn. It would have been used instead of a coat to pull over your head if it was really cold, or just to put across your shoulders when needed. There was clothes items in here. There were tools, sheep shears just in case, and tools to, I believe this is a planer, is that right? Came along with them. Of course, the men and the boys were ready to go to the woods to cut down the timbers and shape the logs so that they could eventually build their houses. Books, a few books came along. Very special was the Holy Scriptures. The Gesangbuch was another book that was found in every home. And Bible stories for the children and the adults as well. The Gesangbuch was important. It was a book that was daily used for their prayers. The Holy Scriptures, of course, gave them direction as to how to live their lives. And the Bible stories refreshed the stories of the Bible. One thing that I see that I always marvel at, this beautiful covered bowl, a beautiful piece of china, and I wonder why this delicate piece found a spot in the trunk here. But I'm thinking perhaps it was a keepsake, and Mother didn't want to leave it behind. Then there's also, seeds. They knew very well that they would have to till and to cultivate the land and make their gardens so that they could have provisions for the upcoming winter. So they brought wheat seeds, barley seeds, pumpkin seeds, corn seed, flower seeds that had come along from Russia. And I might say some of them are still in circulation at this time. So anyway, this is part of the trunk that held a few things that were good for good memories, and other things that they needed for their new life in Manitoba. I'll close this up again. It's a big lock on the trunk. It could be locked if need be. The Mennonites had been granted large reserves of land to settle on. The East Reserve, of which we're part of here, is made up of 8 townships, approximately, I think, maybe about 50 miles by 100 miles. And I'm wondering, can we even imagine what the Manitoba countryside might have looked like at that time? Some of the new immigrants spent up to 3 weeks in the immigration sheds, leaving to spend their first, sometimes their second winters in a small underground house called a zemlin. They called it home. My grandpa Letkeman was 1 year old when, along with his parents and 7 siblings, immigrated to Manitoba. It is hard to imagine their early life in such crowded shelters. And following that, another diary entry, supposedly the writer and his wife had wondered, okay, so what was the next thing that they would need? They were living in their zemlin. And the wife had answered and said, absolutely, we need to have a cow. And so he writes, I went to a river settler to ask if I could buy a cow. In what was a strange language to me, I had learned to ask, how much, how much, how much? Anyway, I paid the man $10 and walked home with a cow. We read of untold hardships during those pioneer years. We also read that before long, the countryside was dotted with countless traditional villages, such as they had been used to in Russia, and such as we here see at Mennonite Heritage Village. For a people's determination, for their strength, for their perseverance, for their God-given faith, we are truly grateful. Thank you for listening.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow are so pretty in the sky. they're also on the faces of the people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies crying. I watch them grow. They'll learn so much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yeah.
All right, we are back with Hali Reimer-Chaplin, all the way from PEI. And Hali, what do you have for us this week in your Mental Health Minute?
Well, you remember a little while back, we talked about our five senses. And you know what? You can use those not only in the here and the now, but if you're feeling stressed and you want to kind of calm yourself down, a really great way to do that is by thinking about happy memories. And if we think about details of a happy memories, a time, maybe a vacation or a time when you were really, really content, you think about what you tasted, you think about what you smelled, you think about what you heard, you think about what you saw, and you think about what you experienced through your sense of touch. What happens is that our brains, our memory is so vivid that it fools our brain and our body into believing that we are physiologically back in that place. So why don't you give it a try?
You know, at the village, at Mennonite Heritage Village, that's a key thing that we feel that we provide is exactly able for people to come and experience life the way they may have experienced as a child, or something that they are able to connect with in that way, whether it's seeing some old artifact that they're able to look, with their hands on, or a tractor that they used when they were kids, and it just gives them that jog back into memory. I even had a young lady. She's worked with us for a couple of summers now, coming back, and as we were going through the village yesterday, then she talked about how there was a certain tree that her parents would take her to, and her dad would have a little picnic with her by this one tree by the pond, and it's exactly those things that trigger those memories, and we're glad to be a part of that for many people.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much, Hali.
you're very welcome. Talk to you again.
Yeah.
We're outside here at Mennonite Heritage Village, right in front of the Peace Monument here, or the Dirk Willems statue. This will be the future home of the Peace exhibit here, the Dirk Willems Peace Garden, where we'll have a structure in the back, a pergola with interpretive panels dealing with the peace history of Mennonites. And the reason we have a statue like this here at the museum is to talk about Mennonites and Anabaptists more broadly as members of a historic peace church. So what does it mean for Mennonites? In the 1500s, Mennonites, Anabaptists, and Mennonites are included in that, were persecuted because of their faith. Their faith, as particularly as believing in non-resistance and believing in adult baptism, put them at odds with the state. And during the Radical Reformation, it also put them at odds with both Catholics and Protestants. And so during those years of the movement, they were persecuted. And so here we have a depiction of Dirk Willems down in the lake here, and his captor. And the story of Dirk Willems, he's one of what Mennonites consider the martyrs for their faith. Dirk Willems was imprisoned for his faith. He was captured, imprisoned, held in jail. He ended up breaking free, and as he ran over, the story goes, as he ran over the frozen lake, he got over the lake, but his captor, who was in pursuit of him, fell through the ice. As we're depicting here, Dirk Willems turns around to help his captor and save him from the ice. In the meantime, Dirk Willems was recaptured, he was imprisoned again, and eventually burned at the stake in 1569. So Dirk Willems is one of those early martyrs of the Anabaptist faith, people that Mennonites in later years would hold up as being examples of the belief in non-resistance. And this was popularized among Mennonites by a book called The Martyr's Mirror, which was published initially in 1660 by Tieleman Jans van Bracht. He was another minister from the Netherlands, and he published it sort of as a reminder to that present-day generation of Mennonites where their roots in the faith came from. He felt that they were lax in their faith, that they had developed very comfortable relationships with the surrounding society, and that they needed to be reminded where Anabaptism initially began. And so he published this book of the Christian martyrs, starting with Jesus's crucifixion, including the deaths of the early Christians, and then including the Anabaptist martyrs of the 1500s. It was republished in its second edition in 1685, and in that edition it included etched prints by artist Jan Lukin. And so this etching here of Dirk Willems saving his captor is based on those etchings of the 1685 edition of the Martyr's Mirror.
We're so glad that you could be a part of us and part of this show this week. We make these every single week for the next several weeks as part of the Safe at Home grant that we received from the Manitoba government. And thank you for watching. Please share this with your friends. Share the link. Share it on social media. We would love to share it with as many people as possible. There's some really good little clips in here that help to explain both Mennonite migration as well as kind of the foundation of the faith that the Mennonites hold to as well. And so I encourage you to be able to do some of that sharing. Like this video and subscribe so that you get notified when we put new videos. We put them out every Wednesday in the afternoon, and we send out an email on our newsletter every Thursday. So if you'd like to join with a newsletter and find out all the news from the Mennonite Heritage Village, please email us at info@mhv.ca and simply put in the subject line or in the body saying that you would like to subscribe to our newsletter, and we will add you to our newsletter. So with that, look forward to seeing you again next week, and have a wonderful week.